I'm Carol, and I'm 32 years old. The notification on our family group chat lit up my phone screen like a neon sign advertising my own humiliation. "Let's leave the kids with you so we can enjoy the party," my sister Sarah had written, followed immediately by my mother's laughing emoji response. "Perfect. At least you'll feel useful once a year." The words hit me like a slap across the face. But honestly, I wasn't even surprised anymore. Here I was, sitting in my beautifully decorated apartment, looking at my Christmas tree that actually had thoughtful presents underneath it, and my family was once again treating me like their personal babysitting service. I stared at that message for a full minute, watching as more family members jumped in with their enthusiastic agreement. My brother David added, "Carol's apartment is bigger anyway, and she doesn't have anywhere else to be." My cousin Lisa chimed in with, "You're such a lifesaver, Carol. The kids love Aunt Carol's place. Where are you watching from today?" Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely invisible in your own family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next, because what they didn't know was that I had been planning something special for Christmas this year. Something that would finally show them exactly how much their useful little sister was actually worth. As I watched those notifications pile up, each one another assumption about my availability, another casual dismissal of my own life, I smiled. They had used me all year, taken advantage of my kindness, dismissed my accomplishments, and treated me like the family disappointment. But this Christmas, they were about to get the surprise gift they truly deserved. I set my phone down gently on my coffee table, poured myself a glass of wine, and began typing the message that would change everything. My fingers moved steadily across the screen, crafting words that would turn their perfect Christmas plans into absolute chaos. The best part? They had no idea what was coming. Let me paint you a picture of how I became the family doormat. Because trust me, it didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, methodical process that started when I was about 12, and my parents decided that being the youngest meant being the most convenient. Every family gathering, every holiday, every celebration, I was automatically assigned child duty. "Carol's so good with kids," they'd say, as if being good at something meant I should do it for free forever. While Sarah and David got to enjoy adult conversations, wine tastings, and actual relaxation during family events, I was in the basement or backyard, managing their offspring like some kind of unpaid camp counselor. And here's the kicker: they never asked. It was always just assumed. Sarah would walk through my door, deposit her 2 kids with a diaper bag, and announce she'd be back later. David would text me on Friday nights asking if I could watch his son Jake because something came up. Something always came up when they wanted free childcare. The worst part wasn't even the babysitting, though that was exhausting enough. It was the complete dismissal of my own life, my own plans, my own worth as a human being beyond my usefulness to them. I had a demanding job as a marketing director at a tech startup. I had friends, hobbies, a social life that they seemed to forget existed the moment they needed something. Last Thanksgiving was the final straw that should have broken me. But instead, it just made me start planning. Sarah had literally handed me her screaming baby while she complained about how hard her life was, despite having a nanny 3 days a week. My mother spent the entire evening asking when I was going to settle down and give her more grandchildren, completely ignoring the fact that I was actively raising everyone else's children for free. But this year I had been documenting everything. Every last-minute babysitting request, every assumption, every dismissive comment. I had been building a case against my own family, and now it was time to present my evidence. They thought I was the weak link, the pushover, the one who would always say yes. What they didn't realize was that I had been watching, learning, and planning my exit strategy from their exploitation. The morning of Christmas Eve, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Today was the day I finally took control of my own narrative, and honestly, the anticipation was better than any present I'd ever unwrapped. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment. My apartment was decorated like something out of a magazine, because unlike my family's chaotic holiday gatherings, I actually enjoyed creating beautiful spaces. I had invited my real friends, the people who valued me as a person, not as free labor, to spend Christmas with me. Jessica, my best friend since college, had immediately said yes when I told her my plan. "It's about time," she'd said, clinking her wine glass against mine. "I've been watching them treat you like garbage for years." Mike from my yoga class was bringing his famous lasagna. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who lived alone since her husband passed, was joining us too. These were people who saw me, who appreciated me, who never once assumed I existed solely for their convenience. I spent the morning cooking, and for the first time in years, I was cooking for people who would actually appreciate the effort. No screaming children underfoot, no siblings criticizing my menu choices, no mother making passive-aggressive comments about my life decisions. Just me, creating something beautiful for people I genuinely cared about. Around noon, my phone started buzzing. The family group chat was coming alive with logistics for tonight's gathering. "What time should we drop the kids off at Carol's?" Sarah had written. "Should we bring anything, or is Carol handling everything like usual?" From David. My mother added, "Carol, make sure you have enough Christmas movies. You know how restless they get." I watched these messages accumulate, each one a perfect example of their entitled mindset. Not one question about what I wanted, not one consideration for my plans, not even a thank you in advance. Just assumptions built on years of my compliance. But today, their assumptions were about to meet reality. I opened the group chat and began typing my response, the words flowing easily because I had rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times. The message I was about to send would destroy their Christmas plans and finally force them to handle their own responsibilities. My fingers moved across the keyboard with surgical precision as I crafted the message that would finally set me free. "Hey everyone, I hope you're all having a wonderful Christmas Eve. I wanted to let you know that I won't be available for babysitting tonight or any other time during the holidays." I paused, savoring the moment before continuing. "I know this might come as a surprise since you've all made plans assuming my availability, but I've decided to spend Christmas with people who actually appreciate my company rather than just my usefulness. Have a wonderful holiday, figuring out your own childcare arrangements." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear their collective gasp through the screen. Then, like a dam bursting, the responses came flooding in. Sarah was the first to react. "Carol, this isn't funny. We have reservations tonight and the babysitter we usually hire is with her own family." The desperation in her message was almost palpable. David quickly followed. "Come on, Carol, don't be dramatic. It's Christmas. Family helps family." The irony of him talking about family helping family wasn't lost on me, considering how one-sided that help had always been. My mother's response was predictably manipulative. "Carol, honey, I think you're being a bit selfish. The children are so excited to spend Christmas Eve with their favorite aunt." Favorite aunt, right? More like only available aunt. But I wasn't done. I had one more surprise for them, something I had been planning for weeks. I opened a separate message thread and began typing my masterstroke. "Oh, and before anyone tries to guilt me into changing my mind, I should mention that I've started a group chat with all your regular babysitters, and we've been comparing notes about rates and availability. Turns out, market rate for childcare in our area is about $25 per hour per child, plus overtime for holidays. Just thought you should know for future reference." The chaos that followed was everything I had hoped for and more. My phone exploded with individual messages, each family member trying a different manipulation tactic. Sarah tried bargaining, David attempted intimidation, and my mother went straight for emotional blackmail. But for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely free to ignore them all. By 6 p.m., my apartment had transformed into exactly the kind of Christmas gathering I had always dreamed of hosting. Jessica arrived first with homemade cookies and a bottle of champagne, immediately pulling me into a hug that felt like validation. "You did it," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Mike showed up with his legendary lasagna and stories from his recent trip to Italy that had me laughing until my sides hurt. Mrs. Patterson brought her late husband's famous eggnog recipe and tears in her eyes when she saw my Christmas tree. "It's been so long since I've had somewhere beautiful to celebrate," she said softly. "These were my people. These were the humans who saw me as a complete person with thoughts, feelings, dreams, and boundaries." As we sat around my dining table, sharing food and genuine conversation, I realized what I had been missing all these years. My phone had been buzzing constantly, but I had turned it face down and ignored it completely. Jessica noticed and raised her glass. "To Carol, for finally choosing herself," she announced. "And to the family who's probably having the worst Christmas Eve of their lives trying to manage their own children." We laughed, clinked glasses, and I felt lighter than I had in years. This was what Christmas was supposed to feel like. Joy, appreciation, mutual respect, and genuine love. Around 9 p.m., curiosity finally got the better of me. I flipped my phone over to check the damage, and the sight that greeted me was better than any Christmas present I could have imagined. 47 missed calls, 32 text messages. The family group chat looked like a tornado had torn through it. Sarah had called in sick to her own Christmas party. David was frantically trying to find last-minute childcare and failing spectacularly. My mother was posting passive-aggressive status updates about ungrateful children and family disappointments. But the best part? They were finally dealing with their own responsibilities, and it was chaos. Pure, beautiful chaos. Have you ever experienced something that felt wrong for years before you finally found the courage to change it? Let me know in the comments what boundaries you've had to set with your own family. Christmas morning brought the most peaceful holiday I had experienced in over a decade. I woke up naturally. No screaming children demanding breakfast. No frantic siblings calling for emergency babysitting. No mother guilt-tripping me about family obligations. Just silence, coffee, and the satisfaction of a decision well made. My phone showed another avalanche of messages from the night before. The family group chat read like a play-by-play of their complete meltdown. Sarah had ended up canceling her Christmas Eve plans entirely because she couldn't find childcare. David had to leave his office party early when his usual backup babysitter demanded holiday rates he wasn't willing to pay. My parents had spent their evening managing grandchildren they rarely dealt with alone, and judging by the timestamps on their messages, it hadn't gone well. But here's the thing that really got me laughing, and I mean really laughing until I had tears in my eyes, was my mother's final message of the night. Carol, we need to talk about this tomorrow. This behavior is completely unacceptable and very unlike you, unlike me. As if standing up for myself was some kind of personality defect that needed correcting. Jessica texted me around 10 a.m. "Merry Christmas, you beautiful rebel. How does freedom taste?" I responded with a photo of my peaceful morning setup. Coffee and croissants on my balcony, no chaos in sight. The individual messages had started trickling in around noon. Sarah's was first. "Carol, I think we need to have a serious conversation about last night. What you did really hurt the kids." Always with the emotional manipulation through children, as if her poor planning was somehow my fault. David's approach was more direct. "You really screwed us over, Carol. I hope you're happy." The complete lack of self-awareness was almost impressive, but it was my mother's message that really showed me how little they understood what had actually happened. "Honey, I know you're going through something, but this isn't the way to handle it. Family is family, and we need to stick together. Come over for dinner tonight, and we'll forget this whole thing ever happened. Forget it ever happened." As if my boundaries were just a temporary inconvenience to be swept under the rug. That's when I knew this was just the beginning. They thought this was a phase, a momentary rebellion that would pass once I came to my senses. They had no idea that I had finally come to my senses, and there was no going back. I was about to show them that the old Carol, the pushover Carol, the always available Carol, was gone forever. And the new Carol? She was just getting started. The week between Christmas and New Year's was when things got really interesting. My family, bless their entitled hearts, seemed to think that if they just waited long enough, I would crack under the pressure and go back to being their personal servant. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Sarah showed up at my apartment on December 28th, unannounced as usual, with both kids in tow. She knocked on my door like she owned the place, and when I opened it, she pushed past me with that familiar assumption that I would just automatically take the children. "Carol, thank God you're home," she said, already removing her daughter's coat. "I have a hair appointment and the babysitter canceled last minute. You know how hard it is to get an appointment with my stylist." I stood there for a moment, watching this performance of entitlement that I had tolerated for years. The old Carol would have sighed, taken the kids, and spent her afternoon being unpaid childcare. The new Carol? Well, she had other plans. "No," I said simply. Sarah stopped mid-motion, her son's jacket half off. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no, Sarah. I'm not babysitting your children today. Or any day. Actually, unless you want to pay me market rate and ask in advance like a civilized human being." The look on her face was priceless. Pure shock, like I had just spoken in a foreign language. "Carol, don't be ridiculous. It's just for a few hours." "Then take them with you," I suggested cheerfully. "Or reschedule your appointment. Or find actual childcare. You know, all the things normal parents do when they have children." She stared at me like I had grown a second head. "I don't understand what's gotten into you lately. This isn't like you at all." And there it was again. This magical idea that standing up for myself was somehow a personality disorder rather than long overdue self-respect. "You're right," I said, leaning against my doorframe. "The old me would have said yes and spent another afternoon being taken advantage of. But here's the thing, Sarah. I'm done being the family pushover. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below." Sarah's meltdown was spectacular. She went through the entire playbook of manipulation tactics I had seen her use since we were teenagers. First came the guilt. "I can't believe you're being so selfish." Then the threats. "Mom and Dad are going to hear about this." Finally, the crocodile tears. "I'm just so overwhelmed lately." I watched this performance with the detached interest of someone observing a fascinating but predictable animal behavior. It was like seeing the Matrix code for the first time, all the patterns that had controlled me for years suddenly visible and powerless. "Sarah," I said when she finished her dramatic monologue, "here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your children and leave my apartment. You're going to figure out your own childcare like every other parent in the world. And if you ever want me to babysit in the future, you're going to ask nicely, give me advance notice, and pay me appropriately." "This is insane," she shrieked, grabbing her kids and their belongings. "You can't just change the rules like this." "Actually," I said, opening my door wider, "I can. Because they're my rules. About my time, in my apartment. Funny how that works?" As she stormed out, I heard her on the phone before she even reached the elevator. "Mom, you need to talk to Carol. She's lost her mind." 20 minutes later, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail, then she called again. And again. On the fourth call, I finally answered. "Carol Elizabeth Morrison," she said in that tone that used to make me instantly apologetic. "What is this nonsense Sarah is telling me?" "Hi, Mom," I said pleasantly. "What nonsense are you referring to?" "Don't play games with me, young lady. Sarah says you refused to watch the children and were incredibly rude about it." "I wasn't rude," I corrected. "I was clear. There's a difference, though I understand how you might not recognize it since I've never been clear with boundaries before." The silence on the other end was deafening. My mother was not accustomed to being spoken to as an equal rather than an authority figure. "Carol, I think you need to seriously consider how your behavior is affecting this family." "Funny," I said. "I've been thinking the same thing about all of you." New Year's Eve brought the family summit. They called it a family dinner. But I knew better. This was an intervention designed to bring me back into line, to restore the natural order where Carol says yes to everything and everyone else benefits. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to spend New Year's Eve with Jessica and Mike, people who actually enjoyed my company. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see how they planned to handle this new version of me. I arrived at my parents' house precisely on time, which apparently threw them off because they were clearly expecting me to be early so I could help with dinner preparation. My mother looked genuinely confused when I walked in empty-handed. "Carol, honey, could you help me with the appetizers?" she asked, already moving toward the kitchen with the assumption that I would follow. "I'm good, thanks," I said, settling into the living room chair with the best view of the room. "I'll just wait here for dinner to be ready." The look of bewilderment on her face was almost comical. In 32 years, I had never sat down while she cooked. I had never refused to help. I had never prioritized my own comfort over her convenience. Sarah and David arrived with their families, and I watched the carefully orchestrated performance begin. Extra attention to the children, lots of talk about how wonderful it was when family helped family, pointed comments about the importance of maintaining family traditions. During dinner, my father cleared his throat in that way that meant he was about to deliver what he considered wisdom. "Carol, your mother and I have been talking, and we're concerned about this phase you're going through." "Phase?" I asked, cutting my roast beef with surgical precision. "This boundary thing," Sarah jumped in. "It's causing problems for everyone. Only for people who were depending on exploiting my boundaries," I replied calmly. "Funny how that works." David leaned forward with that condescending expression he had perfected in high school. "Look, Carol, we get that you're trying to assert yourself or whatever, but you can't just abandon your family responsibilities." I set down my fork and looked around the table at these people who had spent years taking me for granted. "What responsibilities, David? The responsibility to provide free childcare whenever you feel like it? The responsibility to sacrifice my own plans for your convenience? The responsibility to be grateful for the privilege of being used?" The table fell silent except for the sound of children chattering, blissfully unaware of the adult drama unfolding around them. "We never used you," my mother said stiffly. "Really?" I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I had been documenting everything. "Let me just read you some highlights from this year alone." What happened next was the most satisfying moment of my entire adult life. I began reading from my detailed log of family exploitation, and with each entry, I watched their confident expressions crumble. January 15th. Sarah called at 8 p.m. asking me to babysit the next morning because her regular sitter was sick. When I mentioned I had a work presentation to prepare for, she said, "You can do that after the kids are asleep." February 3rd, David dropped Jake off for what he said would be 2 hours. Came back 6 hours later, drunk, saying the game went into overtime and then they had to celebrate. March 22nd. Mom asked me to host Easter dinner because my apartment was more convenient, then criticized my menu choices and left me with all the cleanup while everyone else went for a walk. I continued reading. month by month, entry by entry. The uncomfortable shifting around the table was like music to my ears. They had no idea I had been documenting their behavior, and seeing it laid out chronologically made the pattern impossible to deny. October 14th. Sarah's exact words when I said I had plans on Saturday were, "What plans could you possibly have that are more important than family?" November 30th. David's response when I asked if he could find other childcare was, "Come on, Carol. It's not like you have anything better to do." By the time I finished reading, the silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My father was staring at his plate. Sarah was crying, though whether from shame or anger, I couldn't tell. David looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't figure out how to dispute documented evidence. My mother was the first to speak, her voice shaky. "We never meant to make you feel used." "Intent doesn't matter," I said quietly. "Impact does. And the impact of your behavior has been making me feel like my only value to this family is what I can do for you, not who I am as a person." "So what do you want from us?" David asked, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely curious rather than defensive. I smiled because I had been waiting for this question. "I want you to treat me like an equal member of this family instead of like your personal assistant. I want to be asked, not told. I want to be thanked, not taken for granted. And I want to be valued for who I am, not just what I can provide." "And if we can't do that?" Sarah asked, wiping her eyes. "Then you'll continue to figure out your own childcare and event planning," I said simply, because the old Carol, the one who always said yes, is gone. This is who I am now. The revelation came from the most unexpected source. My cousin Lisa, who had been quietly watching this entire family drama unfold, cleared her throat during the uncomfortable silence that followed my ultimatum. "Actually," she said slowly, "there's something you all should know about Carol." Everyone turned to look at her, including me. I had no idea what she was about to say, but something in her expression made my stomach flutter with anticipation. "Last month I was at a marketing conference in Chicago," Lisa continued, "and Carol's name came up during one of the presentations. Turns out the campaign she designed for her company just won a national award, a big one, the kind that comes with a $50,000 bonus and a promotion to senior director." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt my cheeks flush, not from embarrassment, but from the realization that Lisa had somehow found out about something I hadn't told my family. "Is that true?" my mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, suddenly feeling shy about my own success. "I found out 2 weeks ago. The promotion comes with a salary increase that basically doubles my income." "Why didn't you tell us?" Sarah asked, and for the first time in years, she sounded genuinely hurt rather than entitled. "When would I have told you?" I asked gently. "When you were dropping your kids off without asking how my day was? When you were complaining about your own problems without wondering about mine? When you were assuming I had nothing better to do than provide free services?" The weight of their collective realization was almost visible. Here they had been treating me like the family failure, the one who needed to be useful to have value, while I was actually the most professionally successful person at the table. "Carol," my father said slowly, "I had no idea. Why didn't you ever mention your work achievements?" "Because," I said, and this was the truth that hurt to speak, "I stopped trying to share good news with people who only contacted me when they needed something. What was the point of celebrating my victories with people who saw me as their backup plan?" David put his head in his hands. "We really screwed this up, didn't we?" "Yeah," I said simply. "You really did. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's a solid foundation to build on." And for the first time in years, I saw something in their faces that looked like genuine remorse, rather than just frustration at losing their convenience. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new corner office looking out at the city skyline and reflecting on how completely my life had changed. The promotion had come with not just money and status, but with the confidence that comes from being valued for your actual contributions. My family relationships had undergone a complete transformation too, though not in the way any of us had expected. The honest conversation that New Year's Eve had been painful but necessary, like surgery that hurts but saves your life. Sarah was the first to really change. She started actually paying me when she needed babysitting, and more importantly, she started asking instead of assuming. She also began including me in conversations about her life beyond just her childcare needs. We weren't best friends, but we were becoming actual sisters. David took longer to come around, but when he did, the change was dramatic. He started inviting me to family events where I wasn't working, just enjoying myself. He also began asking about my job, my interests, my dating life, like I was a real person instead of a convenience. My parents struggled the most with the new dynamic. They had spent 32 years seeing me as the child who would always be available to help, and reframing me as an independent adult with my own priorities was difficult. But they were trying, and effort matters more than perfection. The biggest change was in how I saw myself. I had spent years believing that my worth was tied to my usefulness, that love was earned through service. Breaking free from that mindset had been terrifying but liberating. I started dating again, something I had avoided for years because managing everyone else's lives left no time for my own. I traveled, using my newfound financial freedom to see places I had only dreamed about. I made new friends who knew me as Carol, the successful marketing director, not Carol, the family doormat. But the most satisfying change was this. When my phone buzzed with family group chat notifications now, I felt curiosity instead of dread. Because I knew that whatever they were asking, I had the power to say yes or no based on what worked for me. That Christmas message had started as a moment of rebellion, but it had become the first day of my real life. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to stop accepting treatment you don't deserve. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and setting boundaries. And remember, you teach people how to treat you by what you accept. Choose wisely. The family that once saw me as their backup plan now sees me as their success story. And honestly, that feels like the best Christmas miracle of all. As I closed my laptop that evening and prepared to meet Jessica for dinner, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Thanks for watching the kids last weekend. You're the best. Dinner next week to catch up on your life? I smiled as I typed back. Sounds perfect. Because that's what healthy relationships look like. Mutual respect, genuine appreciation, and the understanding that everyone's time and energy have value. It only took 32 years and one Christmas revolution to figure that out. But hey, better late than never.